Good morning, and welcome to the Alameda Connection on KCSM HD2. I'm your host, Scott Piehler. April 25th, 2027 will mark the 30th anniversary of the closing of Naval Air Station Alameda. The former base later came to some national attention as the place where Mythbusters blew things up. The area we now know as Alameda Point is an amazing combination of nature preserve, transportation terminal, manufacturing site, and of course, Spirits Alley. But what's involved in the ongoing transition? Join me this morning as my guest is Abby Thorne-Lyman, the Director of Base Reuse and Economic Development for the City of Alameda. The former Director of Real Estate and Property Development for BART, Abby is uniquely suited to oversee the transition of what some call the most desirable real estate left in the Bay Area. Abby Thorne-Lyman, this morning on the Alameda Connection. Good morning, Abby, and welcome to the Alameda Connection.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
Let's start very simply. What does the Director of Base Reuse and Economic Development actually do?
It's a mouthful, for sure.
The business card must be large.
Yes, but it's also very descriptive. It says exactly what I do. So I oversee all things related to Alameda Point, leasing, property management, development, sales of properties, as well as economic development for the city as a whole. The part that's not in the title is I also oversee all of the state lands, trust lands. So any of the coastal areas of Alameda that the city of Alameda owns and privately leases to other parties like marinas.
Background, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up outside of Los Angeles in South Pasadena, California.
Looking over your history, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that as a kid, you played a lot of SimCity.
I did. I figured out the cheat where you could type funds, F-U-N-D-S, in all caps, and you could get an unlimited budget, which was amazing. And I wish it still worked that way today. But yes, I did play a lot of SimCity with my brother. Yes.
Okay, I thought so. Undergraduate, Bryn Mawr in Pennsylvania, Growth and Structure of Cities. Two questions. What attracted you to that course of study, and what exactly was taught in that curriculum?
So I moved from the Los Angeles area to the first suburb in the United States, the main line, Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, and I was blown away by how different it was. And it really just struck up a curiosity for me of, how different cities grow. Like, why does Philadelphia look the way it does? And why does Bryn Mawr look the way it does? Why does South Pasadena look the way it does? Why is Los Angeles different? And it's more or less an urban studies program, but I started taking classes because just out of curiosity of trying to understand the world around me, I gravitated to, even back then, was this notion that development and the role of regulation, played in how places physically grew, or sort of fell into it that way. There was a lot of architectural history and art history. I learned a lot about East Coast architectural history that I could not tell you anything about today. At the time, it was scintillating. But that was really how I ended up in the city planning space, was really just the difference of moving from coast to coast and just wondering why places were as different as they were.
Then you come back to the Bay, Master of City Planning from Berkeley. What perspectives did you gain in that program?
The Department of City and Regional Planning at Berkeley is fantastic. And one of the important things for kids who might be thinking about going into city planning is state law plays such a tremendously huge role, especially in California, in how places grow. I was a Californian when I was in Philadelphia. All of my fellow women at Bryn Mawr would ask me when I was going back to California. That was how much of a Californian I was. I knew I was going back to California for graduate school, and I knew I wanted to go into city planning. The program at Berkeley is very applied, so you get to go out into the community. I interned at the city of Emeryville and the redevelopment agency. I, for a brief stint, actually ran the public art program in Emeryville when I was in grad school, but they were between staff. And now, lo and behold, I am in charge of the public art program in Alameda now. So that experience took hold, but it was really the applied practice, the being able to use the community as the learning lab for really understanding the foundations of land use policies and data analysis. Karen Chappell was one of my mentors there. She's now at the University of Toronto, and really taught me how to use data, in particular to inform yourself about the strengths of a community and sort of informing strategy. I would say the other really important thing about Berkeley is it made me a regionalist. It really taught me about the regional economy and how important not just thinking about individual communities but thinking about the ecosystem of the region as a whole and how different communities relate to one another and the role that people flowing from one place to another plays. That's all different fields I picked up at Berkeley.
It's interesting because I have lived in areas where zoning is a swear word, notably New Hampshire and Georgia, and then live in California where it's, I'm sorry, sir, you can't put that cobblestone there. Is it tough to strike that balance between let's make sure it turns out right and let's not infringe too much? That's got to be a juggling act.
Absolutely. A lot of my work in my past career, I was doing consulting, real estate and economic development consulting for cities. And a lot of that work was calling businesses and calling real estate brokers and interviewing them about what specifically they needed to make their businesses successful and what was getting in their way in terms of the zoning code or the building code, or what was really working for them. Threading that needle was sort of part of the job. Anybody could look at a place and maybe say, oh yeah, tech. Tech is a really strong thing for the Bay Area, but what do they need? What does a Trader Joe's need? So one of the really interesting things was learning that Trader Joe's follows education, right? They look at educational attainment when they're setting out where they're going to go, and they're looking for 15 to 20,000 square feet. Understanding those things, like what is a business looking for and how is a zoning code working to create that thing, or maybe it's not working to create that thing, really helped inform changes to zoning codes.
So you touched on your time as a principal in strategic economic development strategy, giving people your background. You wound up in Reconnecting America, Center for Transit-Oriented Development. What is transit-oriented development?
The concept that transportation and land use are inextricably linked. What we do with land around a transit station affects whether or not people will take transit, and how the transit is running affects how people can and will build or behave around a station. And so transit-oriented development is really at its core just really thinking about new development and thinking about how to design new development, not just in terms of the buildings, but also the streets, the parks, where you place certain things. Like, for example, if you have a BART station, maybe you place the parking 2 blocks away and you put the housing right next to the BART station because people are, maybe more willing to walk 2 blocks to the parking, but would rather live with the convenience of being right next to a station. So it's thinking those things through, thinking through access paths, and really seeing how all of those different elements relate to one another and designing a place that is frankly concentrating people, both in terms of concentrating density of housing and density of jobs as close to the transit stations as you can. So like at the more regional scale, you're thinking about maybe not putting your transit line in the middle of a freeway, for example. At the most local scale, maybe there's a retaining wall that went in the wrong spot, and now you have stairs or something or ramps you have to build. So it's just thinking through those little elements of how to better connect people to the systems that move them around.
And then afterwards, you wound up for a number of years at BART, starting out as a planner all the way up to group manager of transit-oriented development and property development. What was a day in the life like there?
I loved working at BART. It felt just like the heart of everything. Everybody in the Bay Area thinks BART's important. BART sneezes and it's in the paper. I mean, it's every little thing at BART becomes clickbait for the SF Gate. But the time I left BART, I oversaw the entire real estate and property development portfolio. So I was overseeing both real estate development, redeveloping the parking lots with housing. So working with developers, working with the engineers and the operations folks within BART to make sure that when we were redeveloping the parking lots, we weren't messing up the system. So it was really fun. I learned a set of soft skills that I actually don't have to use as much in Alameda, which is how to get people who are really concerned with their one little aspect of doing things to care about the big picture of our housing crisis. Why should a structural engineer at BART worry about us putting housing at the Lake Merritt parking lot? And so there was a lot of internal buy-in, learning how to associate with different kinds of people. BART is an incredibly diverse employer, people with every kind of background. And so it was really a great experience for me. I would highly recommend anyone who wants to work at BART goes and does that.
While you're at BART, you started the Art in Transit program. What was that? What was that all about?
It's like a little thread through my career that I'm not an artist and I'm not artistic anyway. I was in the strategic and policy planning group at BART. So we created all of the policies for how BART ran things. I happened to come into the group at a time when there was an advocacy organization that was trying to push BART to create a Percent for Art program. That was a hard sell for BART, right? I think a lot of people feel like BART is maybe not always being responsible with their money. And we really had to make the case for why art would play an important role in the system. And I think if you look at BART's social media, for example, right now, and how many artists they're pulling into their initiatives that they're doing to really gain visibility and buy-in to BART, I think that the case has been made. And I attribute that entirely to the efforts of the current public art program manager, Jennifer Easton.
While you were there, you wound up Mass Transit Magazine, 40 under 40.
I sure did. I never dreamed that that would be the peak of my career.
How did that go about?
I had some colleagues who really respected my work who put me up for it. I was an odd fit for it because I wasn't an engineer. Even when I was at Berkeley and getting my city planning degree, I never took a transportation planning class. So to end up in mass transit 40 under 40 was something else. It was quite an honor. I think it also was an honor to me because I'm about the cross section of all of these different disciplines, right? Transportation relates to economic development, relates to housing, land use.
Right.
It's all connected, right? To have a magazine that is really specifically diving into one small field of this, be honoring me for being at the intersection of many fields, it felt like a turning moment, that this is something that even folks in the core of mass transit operations would care about.
September of 2023, then City Manager Alameda, Jennifer Ott, hires you as the Director of Base Reuse and Economic Development. Were you looking for a change, or did they approach you?
Yes. And yes. I was looking for a change. I'd never worked for a city, and I thought working in leadership for a city was an interesting place to go, but my skill set was not a perfect fit for being the head of planning or the head of Rec and Parks. I have this public real estate skill set that maybe was more prevalent back when we had redevelopment in the pre-Jerry Brown era. Not a lot of people really work in public real estate anymore. This is the absolute perfect job for me. It's ultimately, Alameda Point is supposed to be a place that has robust public transit, and it's a place where we're supposed to be curating people's mobility behavior so they don't drive. It was really the perfect foray into city leadership.
What sealed it for you when you said, yeah, I'm going to take that job?
I have to confess that Jennifer Ott sealed it for me.
Okay.
I had known that Jen had that role, that she had played a huge role in catalyzing the transformation of Alameda Point. And so to come in and learn from somebody who had the depth of experience with that was such a fortunate position. And I'm so lucky I got 2 years with her. I knew it wouldn't be forever, but to be able to be under her wing, as it were, for the first 2 years and learn from somebody who had the depth of history on how to make this place happen, it was just a huge opportunity for me. I didn't know how fantastic the culture of the city was going to be honest. I think
it does get its hooks into you.
Absolutely does.
Alameda Point is arguably some of the most desirable real estate left in the Bay.
Absolutely.
You must get a fair number of inquiries.
I do. I think this is one of the really fun things about being in public real estate is I am always willing to pick up the phone and talk to anybody. Alameda Point sparks a creativity of thought in people. I get all kinds of inquiries, and I won't just shut anybody down right away. It is arguably the best real estate left in the Bay Area. In fact, earlier this year, we went through a competitive process to select our commercial real estate broker who markets for us. And we got a huge showing
I'm sure.
of brokers. Every single one of them said, this is the Bay Area's best kept secret. And I kept thinking, why is this a secret? And Dwayne Dahlman and I, the economic development manager, we always talk about how we can't be the best kept secret anymore. That's our job, is to make us not the best kept secret.
This is episode approximately 35 of this program. And arguably almost a third of the people that have been on this program are stationed at Alameda Point. And they're all nationally recognized for excellence. Liz Taylor at Deep Ocean, Ron at Admiral Maltings, the folks at Almanac, Dave at St. George Spirits, Saltbreakers nationally recognized. There's a lot of national recognition in a pretty small footprint.
Absolutely. As I was saying, Alameda sparks creative thought. Alameda Point in particular, the flexibility of what you can do in the space, I think is very attractive to people. And I think it's just the fact of where we are, we have talent. We are the Bay Area. We have a lot of talent. To have a space that is entirely your own, that you can make your own, right? These hangars where you can just tinker away and you can have big machines lift heavy things and have all the power you want, cheaply, I might add.
Yes. Thank you, Amp.
Yes. It draws a level of talent that I think we're so fortunate to have, and I hope to grow.
You're juggling in your job the feds, the military, Chevron, EPA, wildlife conservation, the state, the city, and a whole lot more. What is it like keeping that many plates spinning?
I never thought I would deal with more complicated real estate than BART until I got to Alameda Point.
Okay.
It is by far the most complicated real estate I've ever dealt with. It's a lot. I think, fortunately, I came in at a time when a lot of the relationships have been built. A lot of the procedures have been put in place. My job is to move it forward and move it forward as quickly as possible. And I mean, look, next year is the 30th anniversary of the Naval Air Station closing.
Okay.
And I think we have to acknowledge that. And I think we have to acknowledge the wins we've had and also the difficulty of the properties that we're dealing with and how much more we have to do. It makes it easier to collaborate and coordinate across all of the historic and environmental and governmental factors because I have such great partners there. I have good relationships with the Navy. We have a fantastic environmental consultant who's helping us make sure we understand and are educated about PFAS, for example, or, VOC plumes. And what are these things? Is Chevron on track? I really rely heavily on the experts in these fields. I'm not an expert in environmental remediation. Fortunately, the city pays one who is really easy to work with. And so I'm learning a lot. I think one of my goals is really to make it easier for everybody to understand because I think there's so much interest in Alameda Point and curiosity, but understanding it can be really hard.
Kind of a three-part question. I'm going to start with the one part. Alameda Point right now, what's working? What is absolutely working?
Boy, we have momentum. We have strong interest from private investors and developers. We're curating a place that will be privately owned for the most part, with the exception of the state lands. And we have got momentum. We have some fantastic creative developers and investors who are interested. We have businesses coming to us who are really interested in leasing our spaces. Incredible employers, Saildrone, Pica, like these are world-class employers that we have coming to us, just coming to us, not really with us having done much at all. So I'd say that's what's working is we have the interest.
Two follow-ups sort of on the other side of the coin. Do you have any information about what's going on with the Naval Air Station Museum?
As I understand it, I've been learning the history as I go. The Naval Air Station Museum was founded as a collection point for all of the NAS Alameda artifacts that both the city found in its archives and that veterans have brought forward. And it tells an important story of the base. Insurance costs have just gone spiking for everybody, not just them, and they've gotten out of reach of the museum. We are working with the museum to create a business plan for how they can generate additional revenue to cover these costs. And, you drive out and you look at the building, it needs some love. It needs some love. So the city's ready and willing to match funds for a facade improvement grant to improve the front of the building. I think all the more so important with the Radium project, the Performing Arts Center having been approved by council. This is going to be a hub for us. So we're ready to go. We're just waiting for them to get their business plan in order so we can kind of know how they're going to be stable and supported throughout the coming years.
It looks like the Hornet's leaving. That's probably about a done deal from everything I'm hearing. And it makes sense where they want to go, to San Francisco, to that pier, for what it costs to operate that facility. How do you plan for that?
If only I knew. No, the Hornet wants to go.
And no one blames the Hornet. They look and they go, okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
But we hate to see you go.
If and when the time comes, I will hate to see them go. They bring an identity to Alameda Point, but they need the foot traffic. They're relying entirely on people knowing that they are there and explicitly coming out to see them because of their location. If they're in San Francisco, they have 20,000, 40,000 people walking past them a day who on a whim might make a left turn and go in and visit the Hornet. And that's what they really need to survive. So I want to support them in what they need. Getting a plan has definitely been the challenge. How do you move an aircraft carrier across the bay and how do you get them the home? So we've been talking and they've been talking to the Port of San Francisco. There's obviously engineering and mechanics that have to happen. We're willing to support them. We're willing to work with them. I think it's important also because the pier that they sit on, that's a World War II era pier and it comes with World War II era problems. We've actually been completing a structural analysis and study of the piers. And fortunately, that pier is in pretty great condition. The pier next to it, less so. We need to be making major investments in the piers if we're going to keep them. And I would argue we, as both a city and a region, need to keep them. We have very few deep water piers with adjacent land that aren't in a port. We also want to have a financially sustainable plan for our piers. We're all on the same page. I think it is really sad and devastating to think of the Hornet leaving, and developing the plan for that and raising the money is going to be a challenge. But I think we all see that it has to happen. I think the risk is that if we don't keep the Hornet financially sustained, we could end up with an empty aircraft carrier sitting at our piers. And that's the last thing any of us want. We really want it to stay a museum.
Now, on the brighter side of things, the Radium Performing Arts Center, City Council just moved that forward. I'm not sure that people understand the impact of this thing. This is huge.
I don't think they do either.
Do you see that as the anchor that people are talking about?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. A 600-seat performing arts center right on the bay. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it here. And I think the vision is fantastic. It's going to take a big fundraising push. They're ready to do it. I sort of feel like the West Tower and Pan Am intersection is becoming sort of the main and main of Alameda Point, right? It's where the center of gravity is right now. And to be building on that right at the lagoon really will be a huge catalyst.
This is obviously not in your control, but it strikes me that, especially if Radium gets going, that getting Seaplane Lagoon Ferry on the weekends would be a major jump, especially for San Francisco traffic. Any thoughts on, have we talked to, what's going on?
We have.
Okay.
We have talked to, SF Bay Ferry. We've been talking to them, especially because we do have the Oakland Alameda Access Project under construction right now.
Right.
And I think there's been a lot of worry about there will be some lane closures in the Posey Tube.
Right.
Fortunately, Caltrans and the county actually brilliantly found a way to not have that happen for the Webster Tube, which we greatly appreciate. Because of that and because of the worries about traffic, we have been talking to them about running weekend service, and we are hoping that they will pilot it, just try it out for one of our busier weekends at Alameda Point. In the fall, we often have some major events come, so we're working with them. We're hoping it'll happen. They've costed out for us what it would take to bring the weekend service, so active conversations.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. When you come to work, what is it on Alameda Point that you ride by, drive by, whatever, and you say, this is why I'm ready to tackle another day?
All of it. Oh my gosh. I know that's such a cop-out for me to say that, but I drive in on Main Street and I see both of the bridges and I see the port activity and I see the wildlife. Every day there's something new. You know, our team, the Base Reuse and Economic Development team and Housing and Human Services with us, we constantly are messaging about the birds we see. There's, this kind of heron on the lawn today, right? And you don't get that in a normal setting. And I saw a red-tailed hawk attack a heron the other day. You see these things and you think, I want it all. I want the wildlife. I want Deep Haven Park, right? I want the the endangered least turn out on the runways to continue to breed out there. I want the new housing. And then the hangars, the hangars are just so unusual. And particularly, we talk in building numbers out at Alameda Point, which leaves a lot of people out of the conversation. But building 5, I want building 5. Building 5 is the big building between West Midway and West Tower that's got the 6 big hangars all splunked together. It's 500,000 square feet. And you go in, it's in clear span. You go into these hangars and it's just a completely wide open, clear space. And when I bring people through the hangars and they get that look in their eye, like they've never seen anything like it, a building this massive, that excites me.
In many ways, Alameda Point is a revitalization of a city within a city. So that's got to be a series of unique challenges.
Everybody in Alameda has an expectation for Alameda Point, and Alameda Point has its own thing it's going to do too. It's a third of the island. Right. I mean, it is its own city within a city, and it's how often do you get the chance to just have a mostly blank slate to work with in the heart of the Bay?
Do you have any peers elsewhere in the country that are anywhere close to what you're doing that you can bounce ideas off of? Because this seems borderline unique.
It is unique. I do talk to some of the folks in the Bay Area and in California who are doing base reuse. Nobody's doing it the way Alameda's doing it. Most of the other bases have been sold or leased to one developer, one party who's overseeing the entire effort. What Alameda has decided to do to sort of curate this future, 3 to 5 acres at a time, sometimes 20 to 30 acres for the big developments, right? No one's doing it this way. I do have peers, but no, I'm still looking for that perfect colleague to work with.
How much of a blindside was the Department of Defense withdrawal?
On the Veterans Administration, it was a bit of a blindside. I think that their communication has been sort of non-existent, more or less, for the last 18 months. They were doing environmental testing, so we felt good about the fact that they were moving forward. So to go from they're actively in touch with us doing environmental testing to not hearing anything for months and wondering where those samples were, to sort of hearing in a roundabout sort of way that this was happening. And they still haven't even gone through the formal noticing processes with Congress.
Oh my goodness.
So as far as we're concerned, it's not dead. I mean, we're going to fight till the end to get it restored because, for example, they still haven't told the Navy. That's in their requirements. They have to tell the Navy within 90 days of shutting down the program. So there are a lot of steps they haven't done. Congressmember Simon and Pelosi, together with our 2 senators, sent a letter to the VA in December. We still don't have a response.
Wow.
That's very unusual to not get a response. So Congressmember Simon's really advocating for us. So we're still sort of in fighting mode to try to get the project back. They'd allocated over $350 million to the project, which was supposed to be the full budget. We'd like to know where the $350 million went. Lots of questions from us. No answers, though.
Proudest accomplishment since you took the job?
It's not very sexy, but I have built an incredible team. We basically wholesale built a new team. It is not me you see in front of city council very often. It's my team. I have a deep bench, and that means I can touch a lot of projects. So I would say that's the biggest thing.
You've just collected the 6 Infinity Stones, and you can snap your fingers and Alameda Point's finished. What does it look like?
It's such a vibrant place. Thousands of units of housing, all built. And those people are shopping at the local stores. They're getting their coffee down the street. They're going to the dry cleaner down the street. It's a complete community. Those hangars are just filled to the brim with innovative advanced manufacturing and tech companies. And we have blue tech on the water. You know, we have people really testing their equipment in the Seaplane Lagoon and sailing. And, you know, we have a little bit of everything. And we have D-Pave Park.
An aspect of what's going on at Alameda Point that you wish more people knew was going on?
I wish that people could see the number of businesses that we are touring through these vacant spaces. I wish people could see the interest that underlies the deal that goes to council. By the time it's gone to council, it's been months of work, and they don't get to see all of the people who come through with their big dreams and opportunities and all the thoughts we've had and all of the deliberation that's gone on behind the scenes. They don't get to see it till the very end of the process.
What's your favorite thing to do out on the point?
So the thing I have done for fun out at Alameda Point, I'm just going to tell a story real quick.
Please.
My daughter is very into cosplay, and the Hornet hosts CarrierCon in the spring.
Yes.
An amazing event, and I can only stand about 5 minutes of it, but she loves it. So I brought her out to CarrierCon this year, and I did my favorite thing, which is I took a big walk over to Building 29, for those who know, which is over to the west side of Seaplane Lagoon. And I brought my binoculars, and I stood up on a curb, and I just watched the heron rookery that's in this little dead tree that's just right behind that building.
Yes.
And I just sat and watched the baby herons.
You may have the single most Bay Area meet cute story in history. You met your husband playing ultimate frisbee in Golden Gate Park.
I do not know how you found this out.
The internet is a wonderful thing.
Everything.
You've got company coming in from out of town. You have to take them to 3 meals in Alameda. It can be 3 dinners. It can be breakfast, lunch, dinner. It can be bites and noshes.
Right now, I would take them to Blue Drip, which is the new cafe in Storehouse Lofts.
Thank you for mentioning them. They are my reward when I harvest for Christ Episcopal Church. We have food that we grow for the food bank. And we're doing harvesting. It's always straight to Blue Drip.
The owners there are fantastic. They're passionate. They're new to Alameda. I encourage everybody to go by. And they make everything from scratch. So you ask for that egg and cheese sandwich. You're not getting it wrapped behind the counter in the microwave. They're making it for you. I'm going to be very Alameda Point centric for a moment. But for lunch, it's the Scolari's food truck. Probably a go-to for a lot of your guests.
That's
but
all right.
I get their salad. Probably one of the few people who gets the Scolari's salad. Dinner, I mean, I think Saltbreaker is sort of the obvious Alameda Point choice. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of dinner options, but Saltbreaker you can never go wrong with. But I will also say that lately there has been a Vietnamese pop-up truck pop-up across the way at Humble Sea that is delicious. And so I would maybe go to the Vietnamese pop-up just to get the full Alameda Point experience.
Love it. Website, socials, way people can keep up with what's going on with your life.
We're creating a new Alameda Point website actually right now, so that should be up later this year. I'm very excited about that. We do have alamedapoint.co, which is managed by our property manager and has all of the events and happenings out there. So that and spiritsalley.com.
Abby Thorne-Lyman, Director of Base Reuse and Economic Development, thank you so much for spending time with us here on the Alameda Connection.
This was a real pleasure. Thank you. This was fun.
Take care.
Thanks again to Abby Thorne-Lyman, the Director of Base Reuse and Economic Development for the City of Alameda, for spending time with us here on the Alameda Connection. To keep up with what's going on out on Alameda Point, there's a couple of websites you could keep in mind. One of them is alamedapoint.co. That's .co, not .com. The other is Spirits Alley, KCSM.com. Coming up next week on the Alameda Connection, my guest will be author Karen Jensen. You may be familiar with Karen's excellent reporting for the Alameda Post, where she covers city council and other city business. She's also the award-winning author of The Strength of Water, an Asian American coming-of-age memoir. Reporter and author Karen Jensen next week on the Alameda Connection. Don't forget, head to bayarearadio.org and you can cast your vote for the Bay Area Audiocaster of the Year. Thanks again to the California Historical Radio Society for providing our interview location for this week's Sit Down with Abby Thorne-Lyman. And as always, we thank guitarist Bill Hart for our theme music. That song is called Beachside Isle. It's from his album Watch the Sky. I'm Scott Piehler. I'll catch you next Sunday morning at 8 on KCSM HD2 for the latest episode of the Alameda Connection.